You ever get the feeling your whole life is on autopilot until one moment jars you awake? That's what happened to me that morning in Manhattan, right as winter snuck in early and turned the city into a cold, glittering puzzle. I was sitting at this fancy cafe, pretending to enjoy the view, but mostly just hiding behind sunglasses, trying to drown out the noise of the world. Success, money, even the noise, none of it really touched me anymore, and I'm not proud to say I barely noticed the people moving around me. Not until this little kid, couldn't have been more than 4, tapped my shoe with a rag in his hand and asked, "Please, sir, just $10. I can shine your shoes for bread, for my mom." You know how sometimes life just grabs you by the collar? That's what it felt like, staring down at this boy in a coat 2 sizes too small, eyes too old for his face, voice trembling but proud like begging was beneath him and working was the only way left. When I asked about his mom, he pointed across the street to this young woman slumped by a planter, hair tangled, missing a shoe, looking about as close to invisible as a person can get in broad daylight. It hit me hard. Her whole posture screamed out for help even if she'd never asked for it. I followed the boy, Eli. I'd learn his name soon enough, across the street. The city was alive as ever, nobody noticing a thing except me suddenly seeing it all through new eyes. He rushed to her side, called out, "Mommy, I found someone," and the woman, Alice, barely stirred, so thin and cold it was like touching a shadow. She didn't want help, of course she didn't, but there was no way I was walking away, not this time. I wrapped my coat around her and called for a car. She fought me every step of the way, but her body gave out before her will did, so I carried her and Eli into the cab. The world faded into the background, just the 3 of us in that moment, a strange and desperate little family speeding through the streets. At the urgent clinic, everything felt surreal. The nurses rushed her inside, and I watched Eli clutch her hand, his whole world balanced on whether his mom would open her eyes again. I stayed, couldn't bring myself to leave. When Alice finally woke, I was sitting right there. She thought I was a cop at first, then realized I was just some stranger who'd followed her son and decided, for reasons she couldn't understand, to care. The thing is, Alice was tough as nails, sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She wasn't about to take pity or charity. "People don't help like that," she said. And I knew what she meant. New York can chew you up, spit you out, leave you invisible. But there was something in the way she held Eli's hand, even half-conscious, that made me want to prove her wrong. When she finally told me her story about college dreams, a wrong turn in love, family shutting the door in her face, shelters that were full or worse, I saw something I'd never noticed in all my boardroom victories: real resilience. The kind that doesn't show up on spreadsheets. I offered her and Eli a place in my empty guest apartment. No strings, just a roof, food, some time to get back on her feet. She hated accepting, but she loved Eli more, and I respected that. She cleaned the place like it was her job, never asked for a thing, and kept her dignity even when the world tried to take it. We settled into a weird rhythm. I'd bring groceries or children's books, she'd cook soup or leave little notes. Eli started drawing pictures for the fridge, stick figures of the 3 of us holding hands. One night, I caught them having the kind of fun you don't see much anymore. Alice on the floor, making sock puppets for Eli, laughing so freely it changed the whole energy of the room. I stood there watching, thinking, this is what I've been missing. Not success, not control, but a piece of real, messy, unfiltered life. For the first time in years, I wanted in. Things were good, or as good as they could be for 3 people still learning how to trust each other, until a twist I should have seen coming. Rachel, an old friend of mine, stormed into my office, sharp suit, sharp tongue, talking about rumors, about me going domestic, taking in a homeless woman and her kid. She thought it was a joke, a charity case, and when she said it, Alice was right there, soup in hand, hearing every word. She left a note on the counter. "Thank you for saving me, but I don't belong in your world." When I came home to find her gone, panic hit me like a fist. I ran through the rain, checked every place Eli liked, the bakery, the subway, until finally I found them under the arch of a bridge, soaked and shivering. I knelt down in the mud, all my pride gone, and told her the only truth that mattered. "You don't belong in my world. You are my world." For the first time, she let herself believe it. The rain washed away everything that came before, old guilt, old pain. We stood up together, a real family, broken and brave. 6 months passed, Winter circling back, but different now. Alice had started running a center for single mothers downtown, a place filled with warmth, laughter, second chances. Eli ran through those halls like he owned them, backpack bouncing, cheeks pink with life. I watched Alice, clipboard in hand, becoming the soul of that place. She'd finally found somewhere she belonged, not because I'd given it to her, but because she'd built it herself, from the ground up, every gesture a piece of her heart made visible, and at home, everything felt new. Friends around the dinner table, Eli showing off finger paintings, Alice's laughter filling the space. One night, I stood up, ring in hand, and asked her to let me spend every day building a home with her. She said yes, 1,000 times yes, and Eli cheered louder than the whole city put together. Later, walking hand in hand past the old cafe, snow drifting down, I realized that corner was no longer just another city street. It was the place of boys' honesty, a mother's courage. And a broken man's heart came together and made something none of us had ever imagined. A family.so. Yeah, maybe all it takes is a $10 plea and a little courage to save 3 lives at once. Maybe the world's colder than we want it to be, but kindness, that's what melts the ice. What do you think? Is it weakness to accept help, or is it courage to give it? Would you have stopped, or just kept walking? Let me know below, because sometimes the way we answer that question says everything about who we really are. Funny thing about happy endings, you think once you find yours, the world will let you keep it. For a while, it was like that. Soft mornings, Eli's laughter bouncing off the kitchen tiles, Alice humming as she packed his lunch for kindergarten, me sneaking an extra donut into his backpack just to hear them both scold me later. There was a lightness to those days, a sense of new beginnings, of scars healing beneath the surface. We'd walk through the city as a real family now, Eli swinging between our arms, Alice's hair catching the sun, the three of us woven together in a way that felt both fragile and unbreakable. But life, it never sticks to the script. Our little family was happy, sure, but the outside world was always waiting, ready to remind us that not everyone sees second chances the way we do. It started with small things. Whispers from other parents at Eli's new school, curious glances when I showed up in a suit and Alice in thrift shop jeans. Some days Alice would come home, shoulders tense, eyes clouded, but she'd never say a word, just smile at Eli and carry on. I wanted to protect them from every cruel look, every rumor, but some storms you can't shield people from, you can only stand with them through it. Then came the gala. My foundation's annual fundraiser, a night meant for celebration, and in a way, a new beginning for Alice too. She'd spent weeks preparing, working with the team to design the center's next phase, finding sponsors, rallying support. I told her, this is your night, not mine. She wore a simple blue dress, hair pulled back, no makeup but her own glow. Walking in on my arm, she looked nervous as hell but proud, too. And I could tell Eli was watching from the kitchen with the sitter, rooting for his mom. But the city's elite, they're a different breed. The room was full of old money, sharper smiles, conversations that could slice you open if you weren't careful. At first, Alice stood tall, sharing stories about the center, about the women she'd helped, and the kids finding their feet again. People nodded, sipped their wine, acted interested. But then Rachel, yes, the same Rachel, stepped in, this time with her father, the board's chairman, right beside her. They circled Alice like sharks. You've come a long way, haven't you? Rachel said, a smile that didn't touch her eyes. From the street to the stage, there was a ripple of laughter, soft but unmistakable. Alice stood her ground. She's braver than most people I know, but I saw the way her hands trembled around her glass. Rachel kept going, pressing for details, twisting her story just enough to make the room uncomfortable. It was like watching someone try to scrub away her dignity with words. I stepped in, ready to tell Rachel exactly where she could stick her charity, but Alice squeezed my hand, hard, and whispered, "Let me." She looked Rachel in the eye and said, "Everyone in this room wears a mask. Mine's just easier to see." The whole place went quiet. She went on, voice steady. "Maybe I did start at the bottom. Maybe I still struggle. But I'm not ashamed of what I survived. Are you? You could have heard a pin drop. That was the twist nobody saw coming, the girl they tried to shame, standing taller than them all. After that, everything changed. Some people left early. Others came up to thank Alice, to apologize for not seeing her before. The board voted to expand her center, naming her director. The news ran with it. From homelessness to hope, the woman changing Midtown. But it wasn't just headlines. It was the start of something bigger. For the first time, Alice had power, real, honest-to-God influence. She brought in more mothers, built job programs, started a food pantry. Eli became a local legend, the boy who sold hope for $10, drawing donations from people who'd never cared before. I watched the two of them bloom, and for a while, I thought maybe the world was learning, just a little, to see people the way Alice did, without judgment, without fear, but new challenges crept in. Alice's past kept trying to claw its way back. Her father showed up, after years of silence, wanting forgiveness or maybe just a piece of her new life. She met him in the park, Eli on the swings. I watched from a distance, heart in my throat. The conversation was quiet, mostly sadness and regret. "I did what I thought was right," her father said, voice thick. Alice shook her head, tears slipping down her face. "You did what was easy. Now I have to do what's hard, raise my son to be better than both of us." It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was real. She forgave him, not for him, but for herself, and set a boundary he'd have to earn his way back across. The twist? He started volunteering at the center, slow, awkward, but trying. Eli called him Grandpa the first time by accident. Alice laughed until she cried. Life became full, messy, loud, sometimes hard, but honest. We had Sunday dinners with friends from the center, Eli learning chess from a retired teacher, Alice running support groups and writing grants late into the night. I still ran my company, but the penthouse didn't feel like an island anymore. It was home, built not on success but on forgiveness and fresh starts. But there were setbacks, too. The city budget cut funding for the center right as winter was returning. Alice rallied the mothers, organized a protest on the steps of City Hall, Eli on her shoulders holding a hand-drawn sign. Every kid deserves a home. The news crews came. People started listening. The funding was restored, not because of me or my name, but because Alice refused to be invisible ever again. One night, as the first snow started to fall, Alice and I sat on the balcony, Eli asleep inside, lights from the city blinking like a heartbeat. She turned to me, said, "Do you ever wonder how different life could have been if you just walked past US that morning?" I thought about it, about all the ways one small choice changes everything. "Every day," I said, and I meant it. That's the thing. Happy endings aren't really endings at all. They're just the place where you decide to keep fighting, to show up for each other no matter how many storms roll in. Sometimes the world's cold, but inside these walls, it's warm, because we built it together, with love, with forgiveness, with second chances. So tell me, what do you think? Is family something you're born with, or something you build? When life tries to write you off, do you fight for your story, or let someone else decide how it ends? Drop your thoughts below. Someone out there needs your voice. If you believe in second chances and fighting for what matters, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, share this story. You never know whose world you might change just by seeing them, really seeing them, for the first time.